Hi, it is Jo from Minerva, and today we're here with episode 2 from our lingerie series where we're going to show you how to apply elastics to knickers. If you're starting out on your lingerie sewing journey, then knickers is a great place to start. I'm using the Iris knicker pattern today. This is a cotton stretch knicker pattern. You've got lots of different options here for applying lace elastic, picot elastic or fold over elastic. You can also mix and match the style, so you can have a full brief, a high rise, a low rise, or you can change the leg options. You can choose whichever one you like for your own comfort. If you've never sewn lingerie before, then this pattern is a great place to start. Lots of patterns, if you buy a bra pattern, might have a matching knicker pattern with it. So that's a good value way to go as well if you think you really want to take your lingerie making on to a further stage. But if you just want to dip your toe in, then the Iris knicker pattern is a great place to start. I'm using a couple of different fabrics today, so this is not a sew along. I'm showing you some of the components of making this pattern. It's quite simple to do. I altered the construction a little bit, so I'll show you some of the things that I've learnt making these knickers along the way. When you start sewing with stretch fabric, stretch lace and stretch elastic, you will need to make sure that you've got a few of the stitches on your machine under your belt so that you can get a really good seam finish. I'm show how to do some of these in episode 1. Go back and have yourself a little refresh if you want to make sure that you're going to get the stretch in your fabric. You will see different fabrics switching in and out under my sewing machine depending on which part of the process that I'm showing you, so you won't see quite the same continuity that you normally do in a sew along. Before you cut out, it's a really good idea to pre-wash your fabric because underwear is going to be going through the wash on a regular basis. So you need to make sure that you pre-wash your fabric, especially if you're using a cotton jersey, which I'm using today because cotton will have an element of shrinkage. I haven't actually pre-washed mine because I'm just making samples to show you some techniques. So you'll see the label on my fabric, but you need to pre-wash your fabric. If you tumble dry your underwear on a weekly basis, then it's a good idea to tumble dry your fabric too. Take it out, give it a press, and then you're ready to cut. Let's go and cut out and take a look at some of the nuances of cutting on the direction of greatest stretch. So let's have a look at the cutting out. So when we get our pattern pieces, we're looking for that grain line that's called direction of greatest stretch. So this is the dogs that I was talking about in episode 1. So we're going to be looking for our fabric to be on its greatest stretch going across the hips. You'll see that on all of the pieces because all of the pieces have got to harmoniously stretch together. The front and the back of knickers are cut on the fold. I like to fold each little piece with a fold rather than folding the whole fabric over because then I'm not getting enough fold lines. So you need to be creating as many fold lines as you can, and obviously keeping your fabric square, which is why I've chosen a stripe to show you, because I'm going to make sure that the fabric along this fold is even all the way across. Okay, so this is the front piece. I have cut the mid-rise with the high leg opening, but you can use so many different variations on the Iris pattern and choose the style of underwear that you like to wear. You can either pin this in place or you can use pattern weights. It depends if you're going to cut with a rotary cutter or scissors. I'm going to cut with my 28mm rotary cutter, so keep your fingers out of the way, stand up if you can. And don't stretch the fabric as you cut. If this is your first pair of knickers, just cut out one pair first to try. But if you are happy with the size from your first one, then you can batch cut a little bit, because the gusset is only cut one, but I'm going to use that space of fabric there and cut 2, and then I'll have another one for another pair. So batch cutting can be quite useful. I don't have it here because I've just got a small sample piece of fabric, but your optimum amount of fabric to purchase is the length of your front piece plus the length of your back piece, and with a little bit of extra on the end for the cutting person's cut. So you could get an 80cm piece of fabric and you could cut those both on the fold and have your gusset cut here. Then you could fold the fabric again and cut another pair, and then fold the fabric again and cut another pair. So it's a good idea once you've cut out your pattern to see the optimum amount of fabric that you can get. That's why I suggest in week 1 episode to get your pattern before you purchase your fabric, because then you can make really good choices. In this case, I'm going to need another fold, so I'm going to roll my fabric along and cut the back pieces. Make sure you've got a matching set, so this is the mid-rise and the high leg opening, because you want all your seams to fit together. So you should have a back piece, a crotch piece, and a front piece. You should be getting minimal scraps left over, because from your piece that you've got left over, you can cut crotch pieces. You can also piece knickers together where you put different coloured panels in the corner, but I will show you that in another video. If you're using a fabric with different amounts of stretch, so this fabric had stretch in both directions that was equal, so 40% in each grain. If you've got one that's got a wider stretch on the width than the length, then use the widest direction of greatest stretch across your hips, so you won't get that same pull on the back, but you will get the stretch on the width. So you'll get a slightly different feel to your underwear, but if you try it out, you might find it's actually works really well for you. So there are different fabrics that you can use to cut these knickers out. So we're all ready to follow the instructions to assemble these pieces in the right order. We are on the construction part now, so I'm going to show you 2 ways to construct your knickers. Sometimes you might put your elastics on while the knickers are flat, and sometimes you might make the knicker shape complete and put your elastic on in bands. Okay, so you've got your 3 main pieces, a back, a front and a gusset, and you're going to do the first seam, which is the back seam, and you want to enclose it. And this is the part of the pattern that always I have to double check, because you want to make sure that the seam is enclosed. So this is the order of the sandwich. You've got the front right side up, the back wrong side up, and the gusset wrong side up. So I've used this set because I couldn't really show you so easily on this fabric, because this one looks quite similar on the front and back, but this fabric was easier to show you. So front right side up, back wrong side up, gusset wrong side up. So that's what you see, and you will need to find the center point of the back pieces. And how you do that is you're just going to fold each piece in half and either mark it with your air erasable pen or just clip a tiny little V, and you're going to do that on all 3 pieces so that you can find that center point. You're going to pin the center point and put all your layers together. You should have 3 layers, and sew this. On lingerie sewing, you don't have a 1.5 seam allowance. You normally have a 1/4 inch or 5 or 6 millimeters, and that will be your seam allowance throughout. And that is in most lingerie patterns, so just check the seam allowances before you start to sew. And I'm going to use a straight stitch along here, but a straight stitch in sewing is with your zigzag on a very narrow stitch. So my stitch length is 3 and my stitch width is 0 or 0.5. I'm using lace pins because they're really nice and sharp and fine, but don't sew over them because they do bend really easily. And I've sewn my seam and it is still stretchy. And the reason that that layering is so important is because you want, when you open it out, for the gusset to enclose this seam along the back. If your seam's a little bit bulky, you can layer that out. And if you layer it down, it won't be uncomfortable when you sit down, because that's right at the back where you will be sitting down, and you don't want to have bulky seams. The next thing to do is to do a little bit of temporary stitching within the seam allowance. Your seam allowance is already quite small, so this temporary stitching is going to be very close to the edge. So when you put your elastic on, you don't want to be also trying to make sure that this gusset doesn't move around. So you pin the gusset to the edge of the knicker shapes, and you're going to sew within the seam allowance to hold all that down. Depending on the finish that you want, before you do this, you can overlock across the edge of the front gusset. What I do is I sew that down with a zigzag at the end. So you can either overlock along there, or you can put a row of zigzag along there to hold it down. Whichever way you choose, you need to overlock it now before you put the gusset down, or if you're just going to sew it with a zigzag, it's fine to do now. So let's attach the gusset to the underwear. Again, you're using a straight stitch or your very narrow zigzag. Keep your threads trimmed because you're going to be putting elastics on, and you don't want those to get all caught up in your elastic. You don't have to do it forwards and back because all of these will be enclosed, but what you do need to check is if you're just getting a little sort of rabbit's ear or a little discrepancy where those seam allowances matched, is just to grade those so that you get a nice smooth edge, because that means your elastic will go on smoothly in the next stage. Okay, this is where we can split methods. So you can now attach your elastics to the knickers while they are flat, or you can sew up the side seams with your 5 or 6 mil seam allowance and make the main shape and then add the elastics in rounds. So I'll show you how to do both of them. We stock lots of different stretch lace, so you can check that out on the products listed below. Let me show you how to put it on. Okay, before you add the lace, you want to make sure that you've got that gusset front sewn down however you want to do it. I've used just a normal zigzag this time, not even a 3.1. It's just attached down, and I've got just a really neat zigzag. I happen to have got it between the 2 grey lines, so it's virtually invisible. So with your knickers right side up, you're going to attach your lace, and I think it's okay to make these open and put the lace on, because in the side seam lace is really thin. When I do a completely enclosed version is when I use fold over elastic, because otherwise if I have elastic and more elastic and the seam, it feels really thick on the sides, especially if I'm wearing a belt with my jeans. I can sometimes get like a mark on my side because there's too much thickness in the side seam. So with lace, it's fine because this is really fine lace. It's a stretchy lace. It's really pretty. Comes in lots of different colours, but actually there's nothing to say you could put pink lace on here, or yellow lace, or blue lace. So there's not as much pinning to put lace on as you think. You need to pin the start on, and then you're going to stretch the elastic a little bit as you sew around the bottom. So this is the back piece. When you get to the gusset, you're not going to stretch it because you don't want your gusset to all curl up. And then when you get to the front leg, you're going to go back to stretching again. And it's a tricky scale, and you might want to try it on some fabric first. You can't stretch the knicker. If you do, you'll end up with open frilly legs. You need your fabric to be pulled in by this lace and by the tension that you apply on the machine. The other thing that I sort of learned as I went along, is just a thing that made me get better, and it made my things look nicer, is I would have a grey thread on my top, and I would keep the white thread on the bottom, because then you don't get like a black zigzag running around the back. And if your sewing machine skips a zigzag, it can look a bit ugly on the inside. I mean, only you are going to know it's there, but I like to put a different coloured thread in the bobbin. Okay, let's look at how much stretch we need to apply. Okay, so here's my elastic. I'm going to keep this nice and flat, not stretched. I've got one pin in just to get it started, and I'm not going to stretch it while I start because that might just suck everything down into the foot plate. I've got a zigzag stitch, and I've got my lace now attached, and now I'm going to add some tension. So I'm going to pull on the elastic and then use my finger to hold it onto the sewing machine. I'm going to look for the knicker fabric through the holes in the lace. If your lace drifts off a little bit, you can lift the foot and reposition. This elastic shouldn't be at full stretch. If you make it full stretch, they'll be really uncomfortable around your groin because it will be too tight. So you just need to, if that's as far as it goes, it needs to be sort of half of that stretch. Right, we're at the first pin, which is our gusset line, and this is where we've got that row of stay stitching, so we need to make sure that we're covering that up. And now we're on the front piece, so we're going to go back to stretching. I wouldn't recommend forwards and back on a lace because it will chew it down into the foot plate, so you can just run your stitches off a little bit. So you should be seeing this. Don't think this isn't right. You should be seeing some bubbling there because that's pulling in some of the leg, and then when you wear them, you've still got the stretch. There's no stretch here because we want this to be flat and comfortable. And here, this is curling now. Let's do it the opposite way. So you can see that that will go round your bottom. I don't like to cut my lace the right length. I like to sew it on and then cut it off at the end because I don't want to be stretching my elastic too far. So this is what your leg elastic should look like. And because I used a white thread, it's not obvious on the reverse. I changed my bobbin thread, and you've zigzagged the edge of the jersey at the same time as applying the elastic, and that's how you add a lace edge. You can do the same on the top. do the other leg, and then you can sew up the side seams. And when you sew up the side seams, that will secure the ends of the lace. Okay, so this is my first pair. I like the lace on the legs because it makes it really stretchy, but I find it's not strong enough to hold up my waist. So I have fold over elastic on the top and the lace edge on the legs. If you want to use lace all the way round, then you will need 2 meters of lace. I had 1.5 meters of lace, and it wouldn't have been enough to have gone round the waist as well. So I've used some fold over on the top, which is a much better waistband fit. And then you can see with that fold over elastic how my knickers are coming in, and there's a little area of gather, and that's what you need with fold over elastic. So this is how you add a picot elastic. You can add it 2 different ways. So you can add it so that the elastic is showing. That's the easiest way to do it. And you can also add your elastic so it folds down and just the picot is showing. All the same principles apply as when we put the lace in. So we're going to attach the elastic, stretch on the front leg, leave the gusset unstretched, and then stretch as we go round the back. You might find after you've tried that first pair on that you need a bit more stretch in the rear. You might find it's cutting a little bit maybe in your groin, so you just need to reduce the stretch there. You know, you'll work that out as you go along, and that will be how you stretch it under the machine when you get your tension. Picot elastic tends to have a right side and a wrong side, so choose the side that you want. On this one, it's got a plushy base, and then it's got the picot on the top. Some have plushy on one side and elastic on the other side, so you're just going to have to work out which side you want against your skin. The plush side, which is a little bit fuzzy, is the best side to have against your skin. And again, I'm going to make sure that I have my pink thread on the top, and I'll maybe go for a white thread on the back. You will get more stretch on picot than you will on the lace, but it's the same principle. So don't stretch the fabric from the underwear, stretch the elastic, and you can grip it between your thumb and forefinger, and then you can press it down. If you're doing this, you'll be pulling this fabric as well, so try and keep the elastic just away so that you're only stretching the elastic. And the effect you should have is that your knickers are gathering to the elastic. That's quite extreme actually, but I am stood up sewing with a tripod in front of me, so I haven't quite got my body position right there. If you go too far up to the picot, you'll get this little flap of elastic. If you sew nicely on the edge, it will sit really good. I did this bit sitting down, so you can see I got my zigzag right on the edge. And where I stood up to show you, I've pulled it a bit tighter because I'm obviously stood up, and my zigzag isn't quite as accurate as I'd like it to be. So those are a few things for you to practice. And you can see I've got a good tension there where I was sitting down, and where I was standing up I got a sharper tension. So you need to experiment with that. Maybe when you wear them, those would be quite comfortable. But this fabric has a better stretch in the width than in the length, so that will affect how you put your elastic on. So this is your sort of beginner level of putting on picot elastic. You can use it the same as lace. If you're getting around these joins here any thicker bits sticking out, you can trim them off. I've got quite a bit there, you can see, so I can use my little scissors to trim out some of that, especially along the gusset line there, because that would feel a little bit bulky. So you can trim out any fabric after you've attached it around that edge. Okay, if you want to step up your picot elastic application, then you can do it with 2 passes where you have just the picot edge showing. And the way you do this is you have the picot facing down towards the garment and you match up the raw edge with the straight edge. If you've got a plushy elastic, plushy up, picot in. That's how I remember it. And then when we turn it, just the picot will be showing. So let's do it in the 2 passes. Plushy up, picot in, and we're going to zigzag this on. And we're not going to zigzag on this raw edge. That's what it sort of looks like we should be doing. We're going to zigzag so the points of the apex just meet where the picot meets. If you do it on the edge, when you turn it, you'll see all this elastic below. So to just reveal the picot on the second pass through the machine, you've got to get your first stitch line in the correct place. We're going to stitch close to the picot and add the tension. And this is your waistline tension, so you'll want this to be quite good so that your underwear stays up. Don't stretch the fabric, and it's hard on this pointelle fabric because it is quite loose and stretchy. So don't stretch your fabric, and pointelle is quite stretchy, so just keep that nice and relaxed. Use this middle finger to just keep stretching your elastic. Try not to do that because that will give you a frilly edge. You need to stretch the elastic and then place it on the fabric, and you're sewing here up to this picot. My zigzag is on stitch length 3, stitch width 2. So it should be coming right up to these picot edges so that when you turn it, just the picot is showing. For your second pass, you've got 2 options. You turn it again now and you can sew another row of zigzags, or if you've been having a practice with your 3-step zigzag, you can have a go at that now. So you're going to put your zigzag on here, but you can't put it down with these wrinkles because they would just get sewn down like that. So you have to apply a little bit of tension, which is essentially the same tension you applied when you put the elastic on. And add your 3-step zigzag. You can see, look, it needs to be flat. And it's still stretchy, and from the back it encloses down all the raw edges, so we don't need to do any layering out or anything here because the fabric raw edges underneath all of that elastic. So from the back you'll see 2 rows, your little row of zigzag that puts the picots in position, and your 3-step zigzag that holds everything down flat. I don't journal everything that I make, but I do like to keep notes for my underwear. So this is the Iris Knickers. I've got a little sample of fabric, but what I want to know is I want to know what these stitch lengths are all the time, because if I'm doing this second pass on the picot, I can't remember what the first zigzag was, and I liked it. It was a good stretch, and it was a nice width and length and everything. But now I've already forgotten what it is. So I'm writing down the different parts of my pattern. So I've got the picot zigzag on the first pass, and I've just found it again, what's really good, and I've written it down. When I did the 3-step zigzag, I felt that this one was too narrow. I actually felt, although that did the job, it was a little bit wide. So I'm writing down the different parts so that I can swap between knicker lengths for each different part of the construction. If you batch make knickers, then you can keep your stitch setting and do all of the picot attaching. Then you can do all of the 3-step zigzag, and that makes it easier than trying to remember which good stitch you had each time. Yep, I like that one. That's perfect. So I'm going to write that down before I change the setting on my machine. Okay, so that's the 2 different ways to apply the picot. With just the picot showing, does use up a little bit more of the seam allowance, or just adding it flat. Check out on our website, there's lots of different embellishments you could choose. There's bows with jewels in, roses, or you could just get a piece of ribbon, make 2 loops and make your own bow. The only thing you'll need to check with this, that the ends don't fray. The good thing about this is you can make them as big or as small as you like. And when you've cut them off to the length that you want, you might just need to put a flame on the end to stop them from fraying. Sew that on, and that is picot edge, and this is the Pontel fabric. It's really comfy, really breathable, great for summer. Fold over elastic looks like the easiest elastic to apply because it doesn't look all frilly and it seems simple. Fold over elastic, you just fold it and sew it on, but actually holding the tension of fold over elastic is probably the most difficult one to put on. Sometimes I see on a Minerva post someone's had a go at their first knickers, and I always put a great thumbs up because I love to see people start sewing lingerie, but straight away I can see that people have stretched the knicker and not the elastic, and it's quite a difficult skill for me to show you because it's based on what I can feel in my hands and my arms. But I'm going to give you a couple of tips for putting on fold over elastic. This time I'm going to apply my elastics with my knickers made up, and the reason I'm doing that is because with fold over elastic I don't want too much bulk on the sides. For example, on my first pair where I used the fold over elastic on the waist, it's super stretchy and great, but I do get this sort of pinch of thickness here, and I want to try and eliminate that by putting my elastic on in a loop. So you can switch in and out of the techniques that I'm showing you, but maybe if it's your first time, put it on flat, and then once you get a bit better you might want to put your elastics on in a round. So I'm going to mark just past the side line because I don't want my join on the side, because I've been making knickers for a long time now, and if I put the join on the side, that's where you get the most stress on them because you're pulling them to get them on and off from there. So if the join in your elastic is at this side seam and at this side hip here, then the elastic splits, and that's sort of what happens to ready-made ones. So I want to move the join of my elastic and put it slightly more to the back. And I'm going to use the plush side of the elastic to be on the outside. You can use fold over elastic either way. You can have the shiny sides showing or the plush side. I'd like the plush side. I'm going to attach the elastic to my knickers in one pass to get it on. You can do fold over elastic where you fold it over, you pin it all over and you grip it and sew it in one go. But I always get a place, it doesn't matter how careful I am, I always get a place where the elastic skips out of the stitching like that, and it's so awful to unpick that I put it on in 2 passes. So first of all I attach the elastic and then I fold over the elastic. Again, you've got to be careful you're not stretching your garment, you're only stretching the elastic. I don't like to pin it all because the pins get in the way, and then I start concentrating on taking pins out instead of concentrating on the stretch of the elastic. So I'm going to keep my elastic whole, I'm not going to cut it, wait till I get round and then cut it off. I'm going to put this on with a very, very narrow zigzag, what I call it in lingerie, so my straight stitch, but really it's not a straight stitch, it's a zigzag with 0 for the width. With a fold over elastic you need to apply much more tension, but not to the top, just to the elastic. And I'm just making sure that this fabric sticks to the fold over elastic for when I do my second pass. When I get back round to the beginning, I'm just going to overlap the elastics. And this needs to go around your waist, so that's got quite, I've pulled my fold over elastic quite tight there to show you what it looks like when you pull the elastic tight, and on the back a bit less, and you'll work out how much you need it to stretch, and then you can measure your elastics then once you know how much you're going to be needing. Can you see, look, already I've got missed a little bit there, and that's what I'm trying to avoid when I'm doing my fold over, but because I've attached that now, that will stay put. Okay, let's go for the second pass of elastic. Okay, on your second pass, you're going to fold over the elastic and zigzag in place, but don't zigzag all of those ripples in. You've got to pull your elastic as much as you did on the first pass. Don't forget, I've got that little bit I didn't catch there, so I'm going to pay a little bit more attention to holding that down. If you've got any side seam that's stopping your elastic folding over, you can just layer that out. And when you get back round to the beginning, you can just go over the join a few times, and you can also sew vertically across the join. Okay, here's the fold over elastic on, and you should be seeing some wrinkles, probably not that many. I was trying to do different parts in different tensions to show you, but your underwear should definitely have some wrinkles coming towards the elastic, because that means the elastic has room to stretch the fabric of the underwear. I did a bit wrong so that I could show you that. So here it's been stretched out on the second pass, and there's no wrinkles at all in the fabric. In fact, here it's billowing out a bit, and here it's billowing out a bit because it's too stretched. So when you're putting it under the machine for the second time, you need to stretch it just enough to get the wrinkles out. That's too far. That will give you a wavy edge. That's not enough. That's just right. That's too far. So it's a real fine line, but you'll get the feel of it the more you sew. I don't use fold over elastic that much. I use it on waistbands. I don't use it on legs so much because I need to put it through the machine 2 times. It always feels a little bit a labour of love, but it does make very strong legs and strong waistbands. So if you're looking for that sort of extra security, it is a little bit stronger than the picot or the looser lace edge. Then I'll show you where I found I really like the fit of the join of fold over elastic. It might seem slightly unusual, but I like to join my fold over elastic at the back of my gusset, and that seems a strange place, but there I've sort of got a hollow where my bottom joins onto my leg, so I like to have my join there so that around here it's just a nice straight run of elastic, because then that makes the sides really strong. So I join my fold over elastic at the very back of my gusset. So there's the back gusset, Then I go along the gusset without stretching, the same principles as the other ones. Stretch on the leg, stretch on the back, and then join back up just near that back seam, about an inch from there. Ta-da! All fold over elastic. I have my join at the back and at the back gusset. See, I've just zigzagged backwards and forwards over there, but that sits just at the bottom of my buttocks where my legs start to join. So there's a sort of little natural hollow there. Okay, what if you've been making some knickers and now you've got lots of little scraps left over? If you're really enjoying this process and you've got lots of jersey scraps to use, then let me show you how to make a few variations where you mix and match or swap in some different types of fabric. I'll show you some cut points on the pattern where you can add little bits of fabric if you haven't quite got the length to cut the front piece. The first thing you can do to use up some of your scrap bits of fabric is to cut out lots of crotch lining pieces. It doesn't matter what colour they are because they will be on the inside of your knickers. Crotches are different shapes on different pairs, so if you do that, make sure that you put those lining pieces where you will be able to find them again next time. I like to put them inside the packet, so I have got a couple in there for next time. If you're really close to getting another pair out of your leftover fabrics, you can do a little bit of pattern variation, so you can put a little panel on the side. So an example is like this. So I could get a fold on the fabric, but I couldn't quite get this bit on the fabric, so it wasn't quite wide enough. It was a thin strip. So what I did was to fold the pattern here, cut that out on the fold, and then add a tiny little bit of seam allowance. It doesn't matter much if it's stretchy fabric, and then cut this shape out of another piece, and then you join them together, and you have to do all of that joining before you add the elastics. It's quite good fun once you start doing it. You just must still observe the direction of greatest stretch, so you can't start turning things round on fabric with stretch in different directions. You can also add trim. So on the join here, I only had I made a bra out of this. It's a duoplex fabric that isn't very stretchy. So I knew I couldn't make a whole pair of knickers out of it, but I wanted a matching pair for my bra. So I've cut the front panel out, and then I've kept the sides stretchy. And it's meant that I could get a matching set. Again, I just folded the pattern to take that piece out, added the rick-rack, which gives it a little bit of strength. If I'm making lots of children's pairs, then actually I do quite a bit of mix and matching. So I've got spotty grey on the front and a stripy on the back. So that's a good way of using up your bits of fabric that are left over, matching fronts and backs differently. So today we have applied fold over elastic, lace elastic, picot elastic on a pontel fabric, shown you how to add an insert of non-stretch fabric, use up your last bits of pattern fabric, and how to mix and match different fabrics. It really is quite addictive once you get going. The final thing that I'm going to do, because I really like this pattern and I know that it fits really well, is I'm going to trace it onto some card, because this pattern won't last very long if I'm pinning it over and over and over again. And of course, your knicker pattern is one that you would probably use over and over again. So I'm going to trace around my pattern, make sure I've still got the notches and all the markings, and definitely my direction of stretch. mark it up by size, and then I can use this pattern over and over again. Well, I hope you've been inspired to have a go and try and hone some of these new techniques. I think you'll really enjoy it. It does get quite addictive because then you start to cut up your fabric and fit the pieces on and squeeze out another pair. You can also mix and match your fabrics to use up all of the last pieces. This was episode 2 in our lingerie series. Episode 1 was a little introduction on some products and tips to get started. Today we've made some knickers, so hopefully you might feel inspired to try some different things. In our next episode, we're going to make a bodysuit, so we're still going to be working with some cotton jersey, and we're going to make a short sleeve bodysuit, and I'll show you how to put the snaps on the gusset. If you're about to embark on your lingerie sewing journey, then it's a good time to join the Craft Club, where you will receive a discount on your order, and there are special events throughout the year. So if you want to add to your toolkit or add to your products, maybe get some different thread and some elastics, it's a great way to get a discount. If you're already in the world of lingerie making, we would love to see what you've made. You don't have to model it. A flat photograph is fine. We get to see what fabrics you've chosen and what you've matched it up with. If you put them on our website, you'll get a lot of love from our sewing community. Thank you very much for watching. Do come back for the next episode.